So, Charlie, you've raised $17 million building the Uber for medical scans. So, CT, CAT scans, MRI scans, ultrasounds, that sort of thing. A scan is basically a commodity, right? So, from the patient side and the physician side as well, getting an MRI done at one center versus another doesn't really make much of a difference once we've got the result of the report. How do you stop this whole thing becoming a race to the bottom where your only route basically is to offer the cheapest possible scan and eventually some competitors come in and lo and behold, you're not really profitable?
It's an interesting viewpoint. I'd say that the scan should not be have a price variance of an order of magnitude. But at the same time, there are quality differences. The quality of the machine, the quality of the radiologist reading that scan, the experience of that radiologist, just how nice the facilities are. Some patients want to pay a premium for that kind of setting. So there are variances in quality. Although I'd agree with you that it's maybe not as vast as some kind of variances in price suggest. For us, we don't want to create a complete race to the bottom because that's not sustainable. If that does happen, the capacity constraints will pop up like they have done in the UK, where there is not a huge incentive for private providers to pop up because of the NHS reimbursements are just so low. But in my mind, I'm a free marketer. I think that there should be competition to a very large extent, and why should healthcare be immune to price competition?
Have you heard of this Brian Chesky, the co-founder of Airbnb, and his 11-star experience blog post? Have you seen this?
I haven't seen the blog post, but I mean, can you expand on it?
Yeah, so the question I want to ask you actually is around what you're seeing in the field of sort of concierge medicine or like 5-star experience medicine and how you might be thinking of that in what you're building at scan.com. And it's a really, really interesting post where Brian Chesky says that when he's brainstorming about Airbnb, they do this experiment where they think of what an 11-star experience would be like. So instead of thinking, what's the next step up? Instead of thinking, what's a 5-star experience? They really brainstorm. They literally think, okay, an 11-star Airbnb experience is like you get off the plane and Elon Musk greets you and he's like, we're going to go to space together. And then we're going to get your favorite Michelin star to cook the meal on the way up in the rocket. And they do that exercise because once you can envision what 11 stars looks like, then you can actually probably make a 5-star or a 6-star experience. Are you trying anything in this space of concierge medicine or just making healthcare not a terrible experience for people? Are there any things you've thought of here?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what our business is all about, right? Is increasing access through building us a really delightful experience and one which creates the least anxiety possible for what is normally a very high anxiety period of time, which is you've been told that you need to go and get a diagnostic test. And we use a similar framework, internally with our product team, which is not necessarily the 11-star experience, but it's just kind of more of a Amazonian way of thinking, which is working backwards from the press release that you dream of putting out there in terms of what your product does. And you're right, for us, the basics, scheduling, you should be able to schedule from your phone or from your web without having to call anyone and without having to sit in a waiting line on a phone. You should not have to speak with anyone to book a diagnostic test. And so that's kind of number one for us. We have these 3 pillars. So the dream experience is number one, you can schedule your test without ever having to speak with anyone. 95+% of healthcare providers in the imaging space in the US, you have to phone up. Second of all, price transparency. You should be able to compare and contrast prices across all imaging providers, across all imaging modalities from your phone or from your computer. And third of all, you should not have to be given a CD or any form of physical hardware to carry around your results. Once again, the vast majority of imaging centers in the US and in the UK are still using CDs as a storage modality. And so they're kind of the 3 basics. But actually, where this you may want to ask more about this later on, but where I really see the space going is actually using technology to enhance the quality of the patient results. So right now, we're the only company in the UK that offer a report which is actually patient-friendly. And when I mean patient-friendly, I mean they don't have to be a clinician to understand the findings on that report. So we use natural language processing via a company called Scanslated to actually take those clinical findings and make them readable by patients. So to us, that is a 5-star experience. That patient doesn't have to wait and have that period of anxiety between they get the report and actually having to go back to a doctor to understand what that report really means. Kind of going a little bit more far into the future. I'm sure you've seen that, you know, all of the different AI startups getting funded musty, specifically in the radiology space. There's billions of dollars of capital being put to work there. All of those different AI companies, essentially what they're trying to do is to look at those images and generate some kind of impression on those images without a radiologist being necessarily present. All of those AI companies will really, really struggle for distribution. It is so hard to go imaging center by imaging center trying to sell your specific point solution or point piece of technology into that imaging center. Like, it's just hard because we've been there and done that. How we've used scan.com is that we can be that single layer of infrastructure where all of those different companies in the AI space, in the radiology front, can partner with us at any images flowing through the scan.com system that have been booked either by a doctor or by a patient. We can apply that technology to those images, and really that puts us in that really elevates the scan.com experience beyond just going directly to the imaging provider.
So what you're saying is that someone's built an interesting AI radiology diagnostic piece of tech, and instead of going center to center across the world trying to convince them to start using your tech, they can just come to you, and suddenly every scan that comes through your system, their technology is adopted there. So that puts you in a hugely advantageous position, right?
Correct. And yeah, exactly. So we really see ourselves as not just the, to use your earlier analogy, the Uber, the booking platform, but really the platform, the infrastructure layer where every single scan is being booked through, and we are the distribution channel partner to those what is the future of radiology, which is in the AI space. Yeah.
So can we do like a thought experiment around the 11-star experience thing? So
yeah,
say in the US, what would be the rough cost of a like MRI lumbar spine? Something like a few $100s?
Including the health system cost, probably closer to $1,000.
$1,000. Okay, cool. So if you wanted to build the 11-star experience, so you go on your phone, you book the scan, the doctor actually comes in Rolls-Royce, chauffeur-driven, and picks you up. They ride with you to the scan site, answer your questions, you talk through it. Then you're invited in. There's zero wait. You go straight to the scanner. You have your scan done. It's actually quicker because MRIs take a long time, right? They're like 30 to 60 minutes, really. Potentially, you've got some new technology actually that you've innovated there as well that makes the scan quicker. And then you get the results. You get like a cup of tea. You get like your favorite snack, and the doctor there and then, the radiologist looks through the report, explains it to you in plain English, and they go, "Okay, here's my mobile number. If you have any more questions afterwards, you can just WhatsApp me. I'm happy to talk whenever you want." And then you go home, and you get also referred straight away to the subsequent like follow-on care from the best people without any headache, and it's all sorted out for you. If we just take away maybe the innovation on the MRI machine side, like how much do you think that kind of experience would cost? And because there must be people getting that.
Well, I mean, you're not too far off of what our current experience is, apart from the Rolls-Royce. We
That's a big claim.
we do provide transport in the US. It's via the Uber API, and we're the only company that does that in the imaging space. Like, we actually have an Uber integration. So we provide follow-on care. You get access to the provider because you need to get to order in imaging, specifically advanced imaging. The vast majority of imaging centers require some kind of referral note, and we provide the doctor to write that for you if your symptoms warrant it. So the vast majority of what you just described there, apart from the AI that is used to speed up the images, which actually that technology is coming out, but that would really be the imaging center that needs to install that, not us. What I find actually interesting about what you're saying though is that yes, we provide one of the parts of the experience is you get instant access to your doctor to speak through those results. But actually, the vast majority of imaging requests are made by a referring provider, such as your family doctor or your primary care practitioner. One of the big value propositions that we're exploring is actually making the radiologist who's read those results available to speak with that doctor who has requested the images, because often there is uncertainty around exactly what some of those results mean. Currently, that infrastructure does not exist at the moment. You typically get a PDF form with the radiologist's name at the top. Like, you could probably find out who they are and find out their email, but no doctor does it because it's just a complete hassle. We're looking to make that possible through our system. But yeah, the vast majority of what you described is kind of how we do it today.
With scan.com, it looks like a really easy business to build. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start, scan2.com. And all I'm going to do is go around to like a load of imaging centers, get them on board. Like, hey, I'm going to bring you free business. Let's make this work. And then I'm going to put some ads out on the internet offering like $100 scans, get loads of VC money to fund that. And it just like, there doesn't seem to be anything so difficult about doing it. It's not like you're, making some new piece of like AI technology that doesn't exist yet. It seems like a fairly simple thing to build. What's harder than it looks?
Yeah. I mean, that means we're doing a great job because it looks like a smooth experience on the face of it, and the same argument could be used for Uber, for Airbnb, for hotels.com, we just need to go and get the supply, bung up a website and it all works, right? Maybe get some VC money to advertise it. What is super hard and has taken us years to do is actually on the infrastructure side. What we do is we integrate with all of the different PACS and RIS, so radiology information systems, of every imaging center that we work with. So what that does is that facilitates all the live scheduling. So when you go on a website, you'll see you can book a live time and date at that specific imaging center. And once you've done the scan, typically before you've even left that imaging center, your results are available within the scan.com portal for you or your physician to view. All of that underlying infrastructure is super hard, super time consuming, and super expensive to build. And so, really what you see on the face of it, the scan.com kind of consumer brand or the consumer website, that really is just the tip of the iceberg. And you will see a couple of copycat sites in the UK, which are the tip of the iceberg. But the reason they aren't successful and we are is because, in my opinion, most kind of aggregator style, platform style businesses are winner take all businesses. There's only one Uber, there's only one Airbnb, there's only really a couple of like hotel booking websites. They're all winner take all business models. And that's why we've been lucky enough to raise from some of the best VC funds in the space, is because they recognize that model.
What lessons have you taken from your time in consumer tech, so at Deliveroo? What have you brought to the healthcare space? Because I'm always like interested in what people or outsiders can bring to this like ossified industry. What have you taken from there?
Well, actually, I challenge you on that. And one of my biggest lessons in consumer is don't just do consumer. And we are not really, more than over 50% of our volume is actually through what we call it B2B2C. That's kind of what the business world calls it. But really what it means is that physicians, doctors and clinicians, etc., are using our system to order imaging or request imaging for their patients. Or actually, and then there's a long tail of, we have clinical trial companies using our software to order imaging for their enrollees. We have very large personal injury law firms ordering imaging for their clients that are in a litigation process. So actually, the vast majority of our revenue is not consumer, and that is because consumer is difficult, especially in a space where repeat rates are low. And when I talk about repeat rate, by virtue of it being a diagnostic scan, you don't really need more. You're not going to need them on a regular cadence, hopefully. Saying that, and this is specific to the healthcare space, but you need to think about how you can really increase the repeat rates, because that repeat rates really is what drives a sustaining business. So for us, that was the moving into the physician-led space, but also thinking about screening and preventative care. So we're actually in the next couple of weeks launching our mammogram product for women over the ages of 40 in the UK that want to order a mammogram on the private side, and then moving all the way down kind of through kind of all of the different screening processes, and we're launching those in the coming months. But yeah, so that's one of my lessons, is think about repeat rates. And in healthcare, repeat rates are really hard. So you've got to think carefully about them, because consumer can get super expensive super quick. And to get back to your point that you made earlier on, or your question you asked earlier on about raising loads of VC money, the easy thing for another competitor to do is just go and buy a load of Google ads and Facebook ads. And we don't want our business to rely on that as a channel. And then second of all is thinking about the patient and thinking about the scenario they're in, typically when they approach a business like ours, they're in a moment of extreme high anxiety. And so making it the whole experience, and to go back to what you said about the 5-star experience, making it as smooth and as easy and as frictionless as possible. And that's what we've done, right? So hopefully you'll see from our website that we are the easiest and the most compassionate way to order imaging in the markets that we operate in.
Let's talk about how you currently make your revenue, or how in the future you could. And like, if we had to do a pie chart of like percentages, you've mentioned now there's like this really, there's the B2C direct to consumer model. Doesn't sound too hot. Then there's this like more, better like golden goose type thing where you do B2B2C, where you get big contracts. For example, if a healthcare system launches, lung CT screening for everyone at the age of 60, and you get that contract, that's huge, right? That's a massive contract. And that's way more probably lucrative than running Google ads and getting the direct to consumer stuff through there. I guess there's also like a referral side where then you refer on to services. Once you've had the scan, you need to speak to this specialist. We'll take 10% of that consultation fee or something like that. Basically, my question is can you paint a picture of that pie chart and maybe just educate me on what's hot, what's not hot, what's like what you're optimistic about and what you're like, actually, that doesn't really work?
Well, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, right? But I spent a lot of time thinking about this. The answers differ drastically in the UK versus the US, in which the two geographies that we operate in. But in the UK, 90+% of the diagnostic imaging volume in the UK is in the NHS, and the NHS is struggling, as we both know, to keep up with that demand. So there's a huge opportunity for us to partner with the NHS to help facilitate or to help them manage their waiting times. Over 20% of patients in the UK are waiting over 6 weeks for an MRI scan, but we know that there's thousands of spare spots a week available in the private sector. So that for me is an opportunity that if anyone out
there.
So
there's actually, it's not a capacity problem. It's like a logistics problem at the moment. It's a matching problem. It's the way in which the current NHS frameworks are set up just do not facilitate real-time matching of excess demand to excess supply. So that is a huge opportunity for us, but it's a technical proposition, and we're coming at this from a software provider perspective, as opposed to how the typical NHS frameworks work, which is private medical providers bid for contracts. So it's a long game, and we're getting close. Secondly, we're two of the big 5 healthcare insurance groups in the UK are investors of ours. So Aviva and Simply Health, and they have an increasing market share in the UK because of the increased shift from socialised to private medicine in the UK, and those who are willing or able to pay are doing so and going and getting private medical insurance, and working with those insurance companies to provide a more consumerised journey. So as opposed to you going to your doctor having to go phone around hospitals to find who's in network with your private medical insurance company and what times they've got available, you can just log into scan.com and book it yourself. And now if you go on, if you're a Simply Health customer and you phone up Simply Health saying I need to get an MRI scan or X-ray or whatever, they will tell you, okay, go to scan.com. That's where you have to book it if you're a Simply Health customer. So we're really excited on that front. And then there's the consumerized stuff. There's the personal injury law firm piece on the smaller side, and then there's like the clinical trials, which we get a handful of those as well. So that's the UK. Sorry, on the US, we're very much concentrated right now on working on the personal injury side and also on the self-pay side for those patients that are under or uninsured. But the big volume in the US, which is a long-term strategy of ours, is on the commercial payer, so health insurance side. So what about this referral thing? Is that hot? Like referring to secondary services? Seems obvious.
It's obvious. It's probably underexplored by us right now. There's quite frankly, we're treading a bit carefully because of the ethical incentives around referring onto a partner that you've got a better financial outcome for. But at the same time, we have agreements in place. Not necessarily, most of them aren't monetized right now. But there's something we could probably explore a little bit more. I agree.
So, Charlie, we spoke about this earlier, but I think my favorite thing about you and your business is its name, scan.com. It's so good. You can imagine seeing an ad or a friend telling you about it, and there's no like writing anything down. You remember that for the rest of your life. Scan.com when I need my scan. So can you just tell me about maybe the importance or like how you think about marketing and like what went into the decision to presumably spend a decent chunk of money? You've raised something like $17 million. Like, why did you spend $16 million on the domain name scan.com? Like, what was the reasoning?
Well, it wasn't $16 million. We don't disclose the cost, but it wasn't 16. I can tell you that.
Okay.
And the history of that is it was owned by an incubator based in Los Angeles, which had been sitting on the domain name for about as long as I've been alive, and had done nothing with it. And they just really believed in what we were doing as a company. They tried to use it for like some scanning app, iOS app, like when iOS was first released, but obviously that got commoditized quite quick. So what does scan.com mean? It shows you the magnitude of what we're trying to achieve. We want to become the place, the website in which whether it's a patient or a doctor orders their imaging. It's the obvious choice for where that patient or doctor goes. And you couldn't pick a better name than scan.com. So if we're building out that single interface for ordering imaging for both patients and their providers, like you have to have a name which represents that level of ambition. So and from a commercial perspective, you're bang on. We chose it because we wanted patients to go when their doctor said go to scan.com, they would not forget what that website was. And for us, the way in which our business grows and what we're going all in on is physicians, clinicians being our biggest ambassador and our biggest distribution channel going forward. And we needed a way for that patient to remember where the doctor had told them to go. That's it really. There's a couple of other like tangential benefits, such as when you type in scan.com and you're on Google Chrome, it goes straight to our website. We're not paying Google a couple of quid each time to get to bid for that click on our name. Vast majority of other companies don't have that luxury. A large part and an increasing portion of our traffic is direct, which is just really good from a commercial perspective.
Yeah, I kind of collect good domain names. I think they're so entertaining. I think my two favorite ones are there used to be a website called isdmxinjail.com, and he's like the famous rapper. Yeah, and I think he was in and out of jail so much that
people
the website would just be an image, and all it would say is yes, DMX is in jail, and like a news article, or no, he's not. And then when I made something a while back with some friends, we were like, okay, medical AI papers are really hard to read. Let's make them easier. Let's summarize them with emojis and easy to learn, easy to understand information. And we just called it explainthisapaper.com because it was just like I like domain names that just like it is what it says on the tin. And then
for sure.
The second thought I have is like Nassim Taleb comment, one of the OGs. He says that there is something about kind of being the tall poppy or planting your flag. Like an example is, when in the 80s when Trump made Trump Tower, he just called it Trump Tower. And that's part of it's just putting his name on it and putting his neck on the line and like planting the flag. But there's another part of it which is just like with scan.com where you're just saying that this is our ambition. We are going to be the scan website. We're not just like, nationalmricenter.com, or we're not just this. We are like the place. So I think it's super, super cool.
Thank you. You're probably one of the guys I get a message every week or two on like LinkedIn and email saying, can we buy your domain name for like $1,000? I'm like, no, you cannot. But yeah, I mean, great kind of quote from Tilly there. Like I agree. Like for us, we walk into a doctor's practice. We have 3-4 salespeople on the ground now, just in the US and Atlanta, and they walk into a doctor's practice. They've got their scan.com shirt on, and these doctors are like, "Ah, shit, what's scan.com? How do I not already know about this?" I agree with you.
So I messaged Ollie, your co-founder, and got some insight into like what might be interesting to ask you about. And he said that I should ask you about the network marketplace model, and specifically the hard bit of setting up any marketplace, which is the chicken and egg problem. With scan.com, it's not useful for providers until you have the payers there, and it's not useful for payers until you have the providers there. How do you get from that 0 to 100? How did you solve that problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, it really is. we in our space, we're a supply constrained marketplace. So we need to have the capacity on the imaging center side for patients to come or doctors to recommend us. If a patient lands on our website or a doctor lands on our portal just once and they don't see any capacity for the next few days, so that they're probably not going to come back. They're probably just going to go elsewhere. So we knew that, and therefore we solved for that first. And we just upfront with our imaging centers that we work with. We said we need you to join our network. You're not going to lose anything by joining our network. It's important to note that imaging centers only, the way our model works is it's transactional. So imaging centers only get charged when we're generating them more volume. So we just said, you need to join us. We're going to pay for the integration ourselves. That's another big learning, is at the front, you have to, at any marketplace style business, has to subsidize one side of the marketplace initially, typically, to get that initial flywheel spinning. So that's what we did. We subsidized the supply side by essentially paying for, we said that we're going to do the integration ourselves and we will pay all the money up front for that. So that's how we did. We subsidized the imaging center side. We were just honest with them, saying we're going to be a few months until we get our consumer website up and running and our physician portal up and running. So just please bear with us. So that was kind of one key learning, is you have to subsidize the marketplace. And that is why the vast majority of successful marketplace style businesses are typically VC funded, is because you have to typically front up some cash to get that flywheel spinning. Second of all, to kind of solve for that cold start problem, is we took a lesson from the UK, which is where we launched in the UK. We launched nationally, which was a real slog because we just had so many dark spots in which we had no coverage, and therefore it's really tricky for us to get those payers on board and those national providers on board. So we did the opposite in the US. We launched the US market in February this year. It's grown incredibly fast, and the reason for that fast growth, it's growing 5 times faster than our UK business was this time when we started, was that we just went super deep and super narrow. So we went just in Atlanta, is about 25-30 miles square mile radius of Atlanta in the state of Georgia. And we pretty much have every imaging center on the outpatient side integrated into our network. So when we were going out getting referring providers, they had every single imaging center that they were used to dealing with, but in one place. And I just highly recommend, as any kind of marketplace platform style business, when they're setting up, just goes for that approach. And it was also just way less expensive to test your hypotheses because you're in a much smaller area, especially in the US, which is just a ginormous country. Just focusing in on one area and getting it right, it makes a big difference. And your feedback loop is just so much shorter.
One of the problems that you're solving is around price transparency. And I think this is particularly a problem on the US side, which is that no one is telling you how much is this scan going to cost. There might be hidden costs. It's not really like a transparent marketplace. No one really knows, and you can't therefore price compare, and that's ultimately bad for the consumer. Have you noticed that when you're expanding into, say, the US, the incumbents aren't happy with that whole logic of we're going to price you? Because I can see a very reasonable person saying, look, like, I don't want to, it's a scanning center saying, I don't want to be too open with my prices because A, it varies, like it might change. And B, we're not about this commoditizing scans. Like, we don't advertise them because we offer these 6 things that this other center doesn't offer. And you're really creating a race to the bottom by being so transparent. And really it's going to result in worse care for patients. So like, what's your thought there?
Yeah, I mean, really good observation. My pushback to that question was that statement when an imaging center group tells me it is, okay, well, you've got the whole of the scan, you've got your own page on scan.com. You prove that value to your patient, just like if you were a hotel that was an £800 a night hotel against a hotel that was a £200 a night hotel. You'd prove your value through, number one, just having a great profile and an enticing profile. But number 2, you'd have amazing reviews compared to another hotel. And that's why I loved your interview with Stephanie recently, about kind of empowering patients to leave great feedback. And that's what we're all about too. Is like the patient should be doing the marketing for you if you're that great, right? so that's my pushback. And then think secondly, we got off, timing was extremely fortunate in the US, and this was in no way pre-planned, but just luck, was that we in July 1st of last year, 2022, there was a Price Transparency Act passed by Congress, which essentially forced all of the health insurance companies to disclose their negotiated rates with healthcare providers. So actually that data is publicly available. Typically it's in like 7 gigabyte CSV files, which the normal human being, you need like a supercomputer to read, but they are available. And therefore, because of that availability, actually we don't necessarily need to go and ask those imaging centers for their negotiated rates. We can pull them ourselves. So really, I agree, like 2 years ago, this model would not have been really viable, because you're correct, so imaging groups or healthcare providers in general, like basic game theory, like why would they disclose their pricing if they're going to then have to compete on price?
So if I was building a scan.com competitor today from the ground up, my strategy would be that I would make a fake dummy website where you could essentially book a scan, you hit pay, and then it takes you to a screen saying, we're actually not open, but put your email address down and we'll add you to the wait list. I would then run like a load of Google ads or wherever and try and get a wait list going that way that showed really high intent. Maybe if I got to like 500 or 1,000 people waiting, then I might turn around to investors and try and do something there. What do you think of that idea? Or what would you do differently if you were launching scan.com? What am I not thinking about?
Good question. I think that is the right. I often see people trying to raise venture capital on a PowerPoint and with very much untested hypotheses, and that's a great way to test your hypothesis, is to build some kind of waiting list. Definitely wouldn't work in the imaging space, because what everyone's trying to do is not be on a waiting list, but that's where most of my customers come from. But I completely agree that would be the way to do it in most other verticals. Other tips, I suppose, is really make sure that if you want to raise money, the market that you're entering and the business that you're proposing to build warrants venture capital. I think there's so many businesses out there that just don't actually need venture money, and if they were a little bit patient, they wouldn't have to give away half of their business over time, or more than half of their business over time to grow and to launch. Like really to raise from venture scale investors, like if you're raising from a $500 million fund, like to make that investment work, your business needs to be worth more than $500 million. Like the vast majority of businesses that exist, like aren't going to get there. So just be really thoughtful about raising. And like you said, if you wanted to create a copycat version of our website and do something like that, like actually you don't need to raise any money to do that. If you've got a few $100 to spend on ads.
Are there any habits or ways you approach problems that you think have helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think some of those habits, some of those kind of mindsets, we really try and instill within everyone else and make sure that the people we're hiring possess the same. So one of them, and this is our number one kind of value that we look for when we're hiring for people, is grit. And I think you just need it in it more than most other industries out there. In healthcare, you really need grit. And that is because, like you mentioned earlier on, Masti, people in the healthcare space do not like change. So you have to ask a lot. You have to really be prepared to hear no a lot, and then explain again why your solution is better. And that requires just a huge amount of grit, a huge amount of willpower, and really just probably something a little bit wrong with you, in that you're not content with the status quo and you've got a chip on your shoulder and you're looking to prove yourself. And that is one of the big fan of it. Any of you know Frank Slootman, from like CEO of Snowflake and previously CEO of Datadog, and that is exactly what he preaches: is look for people who've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and who've got something to prove. And that's I think that's probably realistically me, and as what's allowed me to kind of to get to where we are right now. And secondly, and is closely related, but is curiosity. Like I knew nothing about the imaging space, nothing really about the healthcare space a few years ago, but I was just like really curious to understand how things worked and how things why things didn't work as I thought they should do in 2021 when we launched the company, right? And I think I get that. My parents had they launched a business that was a motorcycle business, and then neither of them had ever ridden or ride motorcycles. My granddad had a business that was in the computer space. He was working in a post office at a time, like knew nothing about computers, and probably got that kind of like level of confidence around attacking problems that you don't really know anything about. But for me, I think lack of domain expertise is a superpower if you possess the right level of curiosity. And it's so much easier when you go in to a meeting, instead of being in sales mode, being in question asking mode, and really, a genuine question asking mode, really actually wanting to understand how things work and how they can be made better. You just have like longer conversations, more insightful conversations, and people's guard go down, as opposed to you going in there in sales mode. And that was what worked for us so well in the US. Like we went to the US, went and spoke with our referring providers and doctors and imaging centers and asked, how does this work? Like, what's different to the UK? And actually, if you look at our product in the US, like, it's not like we've taken scan.com from the UK and copied it and pasted it into the US. Like, we started with 0 lines of code and wrote everything from scratch in the US, because we wanted to we were super curious about how things worked and realized that you couldn't just transpose a solution from one to another.
I want to touch on this $1 billion health ideas bit. Does anything come to mind through building scan.com? And in particular, I would be interested in ideas within health and bio, like tangentially, that you think, if I had a bit more time, I would go work on that business.
Yeah, I don't have much more time at the moment, but I think one of the clear areas for me, and if I could, even if there's a time in my life when I'm not working on scan.com, or if I was talking with a new founder, I'd want to really look into kind of the geriatric space. Like, naturally, the population is obviously getting older, and everyone knows that. I think you've had was it you had Ben on from Sarah? Yeah, you did. Yeah, and I'm friends with someone who runs a business called Lottie.org. Both of those in the kind of they're in like the care navigation space for people seeking kind of care homes and retirement homes. And that's just such an obvious space in which I think needs digitizing. If you look at the UK and in the US, like net migration is going down, and that's kind of like the popularism piece right now, is that migration needs to reduce. But at the same time, the supply side of kind of the nursing population in the geriatric space is decreasing. So really, like, how can we bring technology to cope with the obvious excess demand? Like, I read some statistic recently around how 10,000 people every single day in the US are turning 60, and us needing to cope with that. So that's the industry I would look in. It's not an idea, but it's a problem space and problem area that I really want to explore and find pretty fascinating. And then I think secondly, like, I don't know, you probably have read that article around from Andreessen around the billion, or like the trillion. You said $1 billion idea, but this is their $1 trillion super app or something. Like, that is, to me, is like, I think that's a bit of a pipe dream, but what I think genuinely could be a $100 billion company in either in the UK or in the US. It's just a new insurance provider, like a new health insurance provider. Like, you've got Bupa, Aviva, Simply Health, AXA, Vitality in the UK, and then they're great, and we partner with a lot of them. But there needs to be an innovative new player coming to the market, either in the UK or in the US, to compete. It's super hard, like, as you see in the US with the demise of some of the Oscars of the world, and I don't think they executed it properly. But I'm actually meeting with Amit, the founder of Peachy, tonight for a drink, and like, I'm fascinated by what he's doing in the space, which is trying to innovate in the health insurance space. And I think you'll see in the UK, as we, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your opinion, like, move towards this more kind of state/private healthcare split, like, there will be enough demand for another large healthcare insurer.
Awesome. I will stop recording.